Hi everyone, Sandra Duran Wilson here, and welcome to this week's Mixed Media Soul Sparks. Every episode I try and give you some new ideas and tips for your creative mixed media projects. And this time I'm looking at, when do you look at a painting that you thought was finished and you said, maybe it's not finished, or I'll do this sometimes, I'll pull something out and be like, what was I thinking? And it's time to reevaluate it, rework it. Other times you look at something and it's maybe, for me, I had a lot of things going on. It was just lots of sample ideas here and there, and it's time to just cover it up. And then there's that in-between place. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And I just want to start with the piece that I thought was finished. And I'll show it to you, and it's actually on my website. I'll have to change it out now, but this piece was called The Solution, and there are pages embedded into it and texture and all kinds of things going on. But what I decided is that it had no focus, and it was just a little bit of everything everywhere. And so I wanted to begin to bring some focus into it, larger shapes, working with papers, and take an idea of how those things can begin to change a piece. And I like to work, with my deli sheets, and that's where these come in handy. Like, I'll just have this part I cleaned off a stencil on, cleaned off some paint, I've got some other things going on. Here's a piece of rice paper that I was cleaning a stencil off on. There's some little interesting elements. I don't think this color palette will work for this piece. These are some laser prints of elements that I made copies of, and sometimes just something like, a little strip of a kind of a graphic looking element can really bring a focus to a piece. So let's, if I had something like this into here, something over here, maybe a shape up there, I start to see a much better composition than I did with everything being the same. So here or here. And that's why I save a lot of these little pieces of paper. Now, when I decide on my shapes, my final piece, I'll share the finished piece with you, but I will use a gel medium to adhere this all down and then do an appropriate finish on top. But this has a satin-like finish, so I'll do that. But I'm bringing in some of the greens from here into here, the blues, some of the orange and golds. So it's the same color palette, but it's just unifying the piece. So I'll have to go back, and when I do that, on the back side, I won't necessarily change the title. I'll just put a redo on it. And that way, when I put that onto my website again, I'll upload the new image of it, yet it'll still have my same inventory number, because that's a whole nother thing. I talk about how I inventory. So that is refinishing something. When you look at something with fresh eyes, you come back and you say, oh, okay, this is how I can work with this. Now, here's a piece that was just kind of like this one. It was just a mess, all kinds of stuff going on. No, it's not a finished painting, but it's like, well, where do I go with it? Do I try and use parts of it or not? The same kind of with this piece. Now this one I started to come back in with the gesso, just using it as a dry brush. So originally I was going to paint over this one completely, which I think I'll still do that. So here's a great little tip. This is 2 coats of gesso over this very nice texture, but this is a great way to jumpstart a new painting. This is iridescent bronze fine, and I'm going to show you what a tiny little bit of paint this takes. See that tiny little bit of paint? Okay, another little tiny amount. I'm not going to cover the whole thing, but I need to get some more water on it. Because what this does, this bronze paint, it actually kind of breaks apart when you dilute it quite a bit. And when you have texture like this, it's going to go into the texture. It's going to separate out the bronze and the kind of a phthalo green. And it takes it a few minutes to do it. So I just wanted to get this on here and then kind of move on to something else, and we can see this develop. So when in doubt, just cover it up, begin again. And this is a great way to jumpstart a piece. All right, I'll set that aside. And I'm not going to show you gessoing this whole thing, but I'll probably show you a finished part. I just want to make a note on here. This was an Elmer's glue technique, a crackle technique. So when I put the gesso on, I want to see what it does. It might actually do something really weird. So I'll let you know how that goes when I finish that piece. Now you can start to begin to see how this is breaking apart the greens and the bronze. And it makes a very beautiful finish to start with. The in-between piece is this. So I'm going to take my gesso, and with a dry brush, I'm going to float it over this, veiling instead of completely covering. And with veiling it, I just painted my tape. Don't you just love that when it happens? Okay, dry brush, here we go. Make sure it's very dry. That way the gesso is going to sit up on the surface. And I'll hold it here so you can see. So when I first started, it's pretty thick, but as I drag it across, I get a little bit of a combination to where I can see the texture down below. So in a way, it's like unifying this background, and it's going to give me the ability to really see what's going on and how I can then develop this piece further, rather than having just this chaotic mess. But I'm not covering it as completely as that. And I'm going over this crackle paste. And I don't have to cover every single thing. It's kind of a push and pull, I call it. Now when this dries, I'm going to have a much better view of where this painting can go. And I have this beautiful layered texture here that's already creating something interesting as a background. So completely cover it, partially cover it, work with a finished painting, use collage. If I didn't want to use collage on that other piece, I could actually use those elements and get an idea and then go back in and paint directly onto the painting. So it doesn't have to be collage, it could be one or the other. But these are different ideas for when you think a painting was done, but it's not. So take a look at some older pieces and remember, keep rotating them, turn them upside down. And maybe that's all you really need to do is just to turn something upside down and oh, voila, it's finished. So have fun and see you next time. Join the Creative Awakening community on Facebook, where you'll be able to post your art, connect with other creatives around the world, and ask questions. Use the hashtag MixedMediaSoulSparks when posting your work on social media. Thanks for joining me